All right, let's dive into something pretty amazing. Most of us never even think about it, but it's right under our feet. Soil.
Yeah. Soil. It's really incredible when you think about it. It's so simple, but vital for everything.
Exactly. And we're not just talking dirt here. This is about the soil microbiome, all those tiny organisms that call soil home.
Right, right.
We've got a fascinating article from the U.S. Department of Energy to guide us. It's called Soil's Secret Network: How Microbes Share Resources. Just came out December 5th, 2024.
Oh, yeah, I read that one. It's a good one. Really dives deep.
The thing that blew me away was just how many different species are in a tiny bit of soil. Like, get this, up to 10,000 in one cup.
Really? Wow, that's more than a rainforest.
I know, right? It's
A
mind-boggling.
whole universe just thriving under our feet.
So let's start with microbiomes. Just a quick refresher.
Yeah.
What are they and why are they so important?
Sure. So a microbiome is basically a community of microorganisms, all living together in one specific environment. You've got one in your gut, on your skin, everywhere, really. And soil. Soil's got an incredibly diverse microbiome, maybe one of the most complex on the planet.
And this article really hammers home the point that it's not just a random jumble of microbes. They're constantly interacting, exchanging nutrients, competing, even communicating. Like a microscopic city down there.
A very busy city, constantly changing. And all those interactions, that's what makes a healthy soil microbiome. They break down all the organic stuff, cycle nutrients, help plants grow, which in the end helps all of us.
Right. And this article, it zeroes in on one type of nutrient exchange that's super important for soil bacteria: corrinoids. What are those and why all the fuss?
The corrinoids, they're a group of compounds, and they include vitamin B12. For a lot of bacteria down there, it's like essential. Can't live without it.
Mhm.
But here's the catch. A lot of those bacteria can't actually make their own corrinoids, so they have to get them from somewhere else.
So some bacteria are like B12 factories, and others are totally reliant on them, like a tiny little supply chain.
Exactly. It creates this amazing web of interdependence in the soil. You get some producing, some consuming, and some acting like the delivery guys, making sure those nutrients get around.
Fascinating. And the article talks about two new studies that shed light on this corrinoid exchange. What I found really cool is they both use the same soil from a California grassland, so they had a consistent baseline for their findings.
Yeah, that's important. That consistent backdrop lets them really hone in on the corrinoid dynamics.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the studies themselves. What did they actually find?
Well, the first one, they took a deep, deep dive into the microbial world. Isolated over 100 different bacteria, including 37 completely new to science.
Wow, new species. That's incredible. There's still so much we don't know.
Right. It's mind-blowing. And when they looked at those bacteria and corrinoids, they found that about 60% of them could actually make corrinoids, produce them. But here's the thing. Only a small number of those were releasing them into the environment.
Wait, hold on. So they're making this essential nutrient but keeping it to themselves. Why would they do that? Wouldn't it make more sense to, share?
It's a good question. It really gets to the heart of microbial ecology. Sharing might seem logical, but in these tiny, crowded communities, things aren't so simple. Remember, these microbes are fighting for survival constantly. So holding on to a valuable resource like a corrinoid, that could be a real advantage sometimes.
So maybe they evolved to survive in environments where corrinoids are scarce, like hoarders who have an edge?
Could be. Or maybe they found ways to use corrinoids way more efficiently. Gives them a metabolic boost.
Yeah.
It's also possible they release them, but under specific conditions we haven't figured out yet. Still so much we don't know.
Right. So we've got producers, some are hoarders, which means there must be others who are dependent on those who share, right? To get their fix.
Exactly. And the dependence, that's what builds this incredible network of nutrient exchange. Producers, consumers, and those crucial sharers, the middlemen, keeping everything flowing.
Okay, on to study number 2. What were they looking at?
This one, they took a different approach. Instead of looking at individual bacteria, they looked at corrinoid levels directly in the soil. And what they found was a surprise. The soil was packed with corrinoids, way more than you'd expect.
Hold on. So all this B12, but most bacteria can't even make it. Where's it all coming from? Sounds like a missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. What they found was that most of these corrinoids, they were stuck to soil particles, locked away, inaccessible. It raises a whole bunch of questions. Where did they come from? How did they become available over time? Are there triggers that release them? Special microbes that unlock them?
Like a hidden treasure chest of nutrients just waiting to be opened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to make things even more interesting, they found that when they added different types of corrinoids to the soil, It actually changed the makeup of the microbial community.
So by tweaking the corrinoid levels, they could reshape the whole microbiome. That's a powerful tool.
Powerful, but we got to be careful with it. Need to understand these interactions before we start messing with things on a big scale.
Right, of course. So we've got this complex web of producers, hoarders, sharers, consumers, all interacting within this hidden reservoir of nutrients. Fascinating stuff, but let's bring it back to our listener. Why should they care about what's happening down there under their feet?
That's the key question, right? It all comes back to healthy soil. It's crucial for life on Earth. It's the basis of agriculture. It filters our water. It stores carbon, helps regulate the climate.
So healthy soil, healthy planet. But where do these tiny corrinoid exchanges fit into all that?
Well, healthy soil, productive soil, it's all tied to what the microbiome is doing. And we've seen how important corrinoids are in shaping that community. So by understanding how they're made, shared, used, we could potentially find new ways to manage soil health, and that benefits everyone.
So if we can figure out how to optimize these interactions, we could boost crops, ensure clean water, even fight climate change. That's huge.
It is. It's early days in terms of understanding all this, but the potential is enormous. Imagine tailoring soil microbiomes for specific needs, like microbes that are really good at breaking down pollutants or making certain crops flourish.
Like personalized medicine, but for the environment.
Exactly. And it's not just about manipulating the ones we know, it's about discovering new ones too. Remember those 37 new species? Who knows what potential they hold, what solutions they might offer?
Wow, incredibly exciting. But I gotta admit, it's a little overwhelming too. Where do we even start with something this complex?
It's a big challenge, no doubt. But these studies, they offer some good starting points. We need to learn more about what each specific corrinoid does, how it shapes the community. Are some better at boosting certain bacteria? Can we use that knowledge to steer things in the right direction?
Like we need a microbial instruction manual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Decode their language, understand their communication, and figure out how to nudge them in a way that helps us and the planet.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our dive into the world of soil microbes and corrinoids. Lots more to unpack, so stay tuned for part 2. We'll dig deeper into the implications of all this and explore how we can harness the power of these tiny organisms for a healthier planet.
Back again, digging deeper into this amazing world of soil microbes.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff. We've been talking about these corrinoids and how crucial they are for these little communities.
Right. Tiny organisms, huge impact.
Before we get too far, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about different types of corrinoids. We can't just lump them all together as vitamin B12 for bacteria, right?
Yeah, good point. Corrinoids, it's actually a whole family of compounds. Each one, it has a unique structure and probably a different role to play. Like, you can't just say all sugars are the same. You've got glucose, fructose, they're all sugars, but they act differently.
Makes sense. So different corrinoids, they could have different effects on different bacteria, some good for certain species, others not so much.
Exactly. That's why we got to go beyond just thinking B12 for bacteria. Got to get specific, understand each type, what it does in the community.
So it's not just about how MUA-CH corrinoid is there, but which kind D and how they interact with everyone.
Yeah, totally. It's all about the details, the nuances. If we can crack the code, figure out which corrinoids help which bacteria, then we could maybe design specific interventions. Promote the good guys, make the soil even healthier and more productive.
You mentioned earlier those high levels of corrinoids they found, mostly bound to soil particles. Any ideas how they got there in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
One theory is they're leftovers, remnants from old microbial activity, like a legacy from past generations of bacteria. Over time, they get stuck to those soil particles, build up that reservoir we talked about.
Like a microbial savings account, tucked away for a rainy day.
Yeah, something like that. But the big mystery is what releases them. Is it just time? Or are there specific triggers, changes in pH, temperature, moisture, something that unlocks them?
And could there be, I don't know, specialist microbes, ones that are really good at unlocking those bound corrinoids, like liberator bacteria or something?
Interesting thought. Wouldn't be surprised. This microbial world, it's all about specialization. You've got a valuable resource locked up. Someone's going to evolve to take advantage of it.
So cracking the code of these bound corrinoids, that could be a game changer. Make them available, boost the good bacteria. Maybe we wouldn't even need synthetic fertilizers anymore.
Right. That's the exciting part. Sustainable agriculture, managing the environment in a whole new way, understand the microbiome, and we can harness the power of these little guys to solve some big problems.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute. What does all this mean for, the average person? They're not farmers or scientists, so why should they care?
Good question. It's about remembering that healthy soil, it's vital for everyone. Think about it. The food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, it all comes back to healthy soil.
So managing the microbiome, it's not just about better crops or less fertilizer. It's about the health of the whole planet.
Absolutely. Healthy soil, sustainable future. It stores carbon, helps with climate change. It filters pollutants out of our water. It supports all kinds of life, biodiversity, healthy soil, healthy ecosystems, a planet that can handle the challenges we're facing.
So even if you don't have a garden, you still have a stake in this. Makes you think.
Totally. We all rely on soil, whether we realize it or not. And this research, it shows how important it is to think holistically. It's not just about saving forests or cutting emissions. It's also about what's happening right under our feet.
Okay, so what can people actually do, even if it's just in their backyard, a local park, anything to help?
There are actually a lot of easy things. Composting, for example.
Yeah.
Food scraps, yard waste, that's all valuable stuff. Put it back in the soil. Give those microbes something to work with.
So instead of throwing out banana peels and coffee grounds, we can give them back to the earth.
Exactly. Close the loop, keep those nutrients flowing. Another thing, ditch the chemical pesticides and herbicides. They mess with the balance of the microbiome, kill off the good guys, make the soil weaker.
So garden naturally, work with nature instead of against it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to get fancy, you can try making compost tea.
Yeah.
Basically, you steep compost in water, extract all those good microbes and nutrients, and use that to feed your plants.
Like a probiotic drink for the soil?
Pretty much. It's all about keeping those microbes happy and healthy.
I gotta say, this has been amazing. Soil's not just dirt anymore. It's like this whole living world, essential for everything.
It is a world full of life, full of potential, and we're just starting to understand it.
Okay, well, before we get too carried away, let's move on to the final part. We'll explore the bigger implications of all this and look ahead to the future of soil science. All right, final stretch of our deep dive into the world of soil microbes.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, exploring all those interactions, how crucial they are for, well, everything.
Really puts things in perspective. This tiny little corrinoid molecule can have such a huge impact on the whole ecosystem.
It really shows you how everything's connected. We tend to focus on the big stuff, the plants and animals, but it's these tiny organisms that really make the world go round.
So we can't just worry about saving forests or protecting endangered species. It's about the health of the whole system, right down to the microbes.
Exactly. Everything's connected. It's like, I don't know, a giant web. You tug on one strand, the whole thing vibrates.
We've got to start thinking about conservation differently. It's not just about protecting individual pieces. It's about keeping the whole web intact.
Yeah, and that includes the microbes. They're the foundation of the food web. They drive the nutrient cycles. They even play a role in regulating the climate.
It's like, I don't know, a Jenga tower or something. Pull out the wrong block at the bottom and the whole thing could collapse.
That's a good analogy. It really highlights the importance of taking a holistic approach to environmental management.
You mentioned this microbial instruction manual idea earlier. It's fascinating to think that we're just starting to decode the language of these microbial communities. There's still so much we don't know.
It's a whole new frontier of science. Imagine if we could understand these communities as well as we understand, I don't know, how to build a bridge or design a new drug.
So instead of just dumping compost or fertilizer on our soil, we could actually be designing these like microbial cocktails tailored for specific purposes.
Exactly. We could create communities that are really good at certain things, like making crops grow better, breaking down pollution, even capturing carbon from the atmosphere.
That's incredible. It's like ecological engineering, but at the microscopic level.
And it has the potential to revolutionize how we approach agriculture, conservation, even climate change. But like we said before, we got to be careful.
Yeah, we need to understand these complex interactions before we start messing around on a large scale.
We don't want to create unintended consequences that could harm the very systems we're trying to help.
So it's about finding that balance between scientific progress and ecological responsibility.
Absolutely. We have to innovate and solve problems, but we also have to respect the delicate balance of nature.
I've got to say, this deep dive has really opened my eyes. I'm seeing soil in a whole new light.
It's not just dirt. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that's vital for all life on Earth.
So, as we wrap things up here, What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
We're all connected to the soil, whether we realize it or not. It's the foundation of our food, it helps regulate our climate, and it's home to this incredible diversity of life. So next time you're out in nature, take a moment to appreciate what's happening beneath your feet. Those tiny organisms, they're working hard to keep our planet healthy.
Well said. Sometimes the most important things are the ones we can't even see. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey into the world of soil microbes. It's been a pleasure.
It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. And thanks